We have a very fantastic group of audience here, and we have a unique session that encompasses the digital idea that we both have guests online and in person. So we have a hybrid situation here. First, I would like to, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests and fellow advocates of sustainability, it is with great pleasure I welcome you all to this breakout session on circular design. First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Mumit Hassan. I see a lot of familiar faces here. So those of you who don't know me, I work in a company called Reverse Resources, and our company is trying to tackle the challenges around waste traceability and building circular supply chains across the globe. I take care of our business and operations in Bangladesh, and I am also responsible for expanding businesses in new countries and building the foundation. We have an excellent group of speakers here today, and we have a fantastic audience sitting. So in light of that, as we have all the speakers joining, I thought maybe would be the way to start the session. First, we would have presentations from our speakers online. We have 3 speakers present, and maybe one-on-one, we can allocate 8 to 10 minutes per speaker for the virtual presentations. And then after 24 to 30 minutes, we can get into the discussion where we'll have the question and answer session across the panelists. And then, of course, it will be fantastic if you could have some participation and interaction from the audience. So yeah, that's basically it. I have a long speech prepared, but I see that we have already gotten into the discussion and we are getting into the mood. And I really don't want to bore you with the regular things that we generally say in these sessions. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our esteemed speakers to start the discussion. I would like to first give the floor to Professor Maike Rabbe. I'm so sorry if my pronunciation isn't accurate. Please forgive me. It's all right.
No,
Maike,
that's perfect. That is perfect.
Maike, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting us. And just for the organization, shall I share my screen already and start with the 8 minutes brief talk? Is that how you want me to do it?
Yeah, that will be fantastic. Yeah.
Okay, so while I'm loading up, I just introduce myself. My name is Maike Rabbe. I'm professor for textile finishing and ecology at Niederrhein University in Germany. And today I would like to have a very brief introduction into a topic which we call the product clone. That was a name which was invented by the GIZ, which is also part of today's conference. The product clone is not a product clown, and you will see it in a few minutes what was the intention of that project. My origin is Niederrhein University. Just a few words. It's a very old university, starting with industrialization in Germany in the 19th century. Today we have roughly 2,000 students, 33 professors, PhD students, and last year 250 bachelor students started and roughly 70 master students. So we are teaching in bachelor, masters, and we are also doing our own PhD programs. And what's more, we are not just doing teaching, we are also doing science and research, and this is how we cooperate with industry, with partners, because this is on one side a benefit for the industry, but it's also a benefit for the young people or our future talents because they get involved, and this is the philosophy of research at our university. By the way, we actually get many students from Bangladesh. Roughly 20% of our students are from abroad, and Bangladesh and China, as well as Northern Africa and Turkey, these are the major or the biggest countries where our young students from abroad come to Germany. And it's always a pleasure working with them. So what is now the idea of the product clone? I want to introduce the topic, and I would like to give you an example how we did this and why this could also be of benefit for companies in your country. And why does it matter? Recycling, why does it matter? That is sort of what brought us to the concept of a product clone. We have an industry which is, that is, you can see that on the left side, which is really a problem for the environment. It's, at least from European perspective, number 4 when it comes to environmental pollution. And what's also a problem for Europe, we are an importer. 90% of all the products in clothing industry come from abroad. So when we are talking about environmental pollution, only, let's say, 20% is within Europe, and 80% are problems that we cause with our way of living outside, and this is what we are going to work on. And what we don't want to have anymore is what you see on the right side, masses of wasted garments, and anyone doesn't know what to do with it. And this is where recycling comes into action. And the European Union actually started a new strategy, and this is something that you shall keep in mind, because you are also one of the big supplying countries. For Germany, you are very important. And what we want to have in future, that is the goal for 2030, we want to have long-lasting and recyclable garments. We want garments that have a content of recycled fibers. They must be free of harmful substances, and they must be produced considering human rights and environmental protection. That is our focus. And going to the bottom here, we want to cut down on fast fashion. So this is coming top down from the governments. And on the other side, you also have to take the people, the buyers with you, and this is what is also done within Europe. And eco-design is a topic. And also Katja Moch, who is the next speaker, I understand, will talk about this chart with you, because the concept for the European eco-design is based on this pyramid you see on the left. We want to start with prevention, like stopping this overproduction and stopping the wasted garments. We want to get prepared for reuse and for recycling. And this is our main focus. And just thinking of this recycling idea, we tried to work on an example how recycling can be done in future, which is the idea of the product clone. That is a word you will not be able to look up in the dictionary. That is a new word which was invented in this context. A product clone is sort of a reproduction of an object. It consists of recycled fibers, and it is recyclable. And it is not just a copy of an original, it is sort of an evolution or an improvement of the original. But the idea is that the style, the fashion message, let's call it the DNA of the product, is still there. And that is the idea. And how can you do it? For this, you really have to go through the whole way of analysis. And what you see here in the center is the textile chain in the concept of a circle, not just a linear, but a circular approach, where we think about refuse concepts, reuse concepts, and also recycling concepts. And with the help of an example, I just go into these light blue bubbles. I don't know whether you see my cursor, just examples how this could be done. And for this, we selected, or we analyzed 10 different products. Some of them actually came out of your country. And one example is a winter jacket. You will not need it in your country, but here in Germany, it is pretty cold, and we need these winter jackets consisting out of outer fabric, with water repellent effects, with fillings that keep us warm, all these things. And what can you do with it in terms of recycling and content of recycled fibers? So one thing that was done, try to improve the pattern, going into a way that you have less or simpler patterns with less cut parts. So that is simply, if you follow my words, you will see how this adds up into generations of product clones. You can also think about modularity, so that one jacket has 2 or 3 end uses. Variability and modularity is the idea behind it. What you also can do is think about disassembly and repairability. One weak point of these jackets are zippers. How can we remove them? How can we get a material to be repaired? So for this, there are sewing threads in the market that can be sort of dissolved by very special procedures, so that parts can be repaired very, very easily. So that could also be part of the new concept of a recycling jacket. So if you take a deep dive into real recycling, then you have to go for mechanical and chemical processes, which are extremely complicated. And in our industry, we can say, yes, there is a potential, but there is no real industrial super good solution. So these are things that will have to come in the future. But just thinking of this jacket, there are many ideas that could be followed. One important message is work with monomaterial. Don't mix polyamide and polyester and some polyurethane. So that would, in the end, be a jacket that could never, ever be recycled. If you follow this monomaterial approach, you could be somewhat more successful. And another quite nice idea is when you think about the fillings. Here you have a sort of an option to hide recycling material for which you do not need the 100% quality, but maybe 95% quality. That could be a very good option for such a jacket material. So if you just think about a product clone and recycling, our idea or our suggestion for your work would be, don't think that you can solve all the problems in one step. Just try to think in generations, go step by step. First of all, try to have a good durability. Longevity is the message that we want to follow. Try to ensure, that is step one, repairability, so that the lifetime of a material is better. Then, from continuing from that point, you can increase the recycling fiber content. Do it in a way that the message of the jacket, the quality, is not brought down. Furthermore, you can work on reusability so that a jacket has a second life. And if this is all done, generation number 5 could be done where really recycling is possible and more recycled fibers can be introduced into the material. So this is just an idea or a suggestion which we would like to make, how jackets could be improved to have a higher level of quality and leave a little bit the track of fast fashion. So then if this would be done in a global type of context, I think there are chances and benefits for all sides, for the brands, for the producers, and that, of course, for the people who live with these garments and for the environment. I don't want to read that down here. You will be able to read this later on. You will get copies of these charts so that, just think of the chances and benefits this new European eco-design will be for you and for your production. So thanks a lot. It was a little bit of a running through all these charts, but I'll be here for answering your questions. So thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Micah. It was very much enlightening and great to see all these different suggestions because we have both the brand and manufacturer representatives here. So it looks very interesting, and hope that we could maybe talk about this a little later, a bit more in details. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Fantastic. Now, if I would welcome Miss Katja Mock. I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong again, but please, if you would maybe have the floor and share your insights on this. Thank you. Katja, could you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see you now. I believe we had a little bit of a technical glitch, which is very common nowadays with these sessions.
Okay.
Yes, please. We can see
hope
you now.
it will.
We could see you now. Maybe you could, if you want to, you could share your screen and start the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, I shared my screen. Can you see it now?
No, it's not visible.
Okay, so I will try again. Now?
It's loading. Yeah, it's there. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah, you pronounced my name perfectly right. My name is Katja Moch. I'm a senior researcher at Öko-Institut, which is a leading European research and consultancy institute. And one of our main clients is, for example, the European Union. We are doing projects for the European Commission, advising them on different legislation aspects and also on the ESPR regulation. But the project I would like to present you for today is the project for the German Environment Agency. And this is the translated title, the new eco-design regulation, requirements for the eco-design of textiles and the possible transfer to an eco-design label. We work here together with the Hochschule Niederrhein, for which Maike Rabe has presented right now another research project, and also with the Hochschule Hof, also University of Applied Science, to get the textile expertise. And this project is meant to develop a German position, which can then be fed into the European process for developing eco-design requirements for textiles. I have prepared one slide to make a recap on the ESPR regulation, which is a proposed regulation shortly before final formal adoption. So it's the European Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation, or shortly ESPR. And the whole regulation has to be seen against the political background of the European Green Deal and the EU textile strategy, which Maike Rabe has also introduced to you a bit. So it is meant, the Green Deal is meant to become that Europe becomes the first climate neutral continent, and as the textile sector is a sector of high environmental impacts, this is one of the prioritized sectors to be addressed also by the product regulation ESPR. And the regulation is shortly before the final formal adoption. So the second bullet point explains to you that an agreement between the different institutions was reached between the European Commission, the European Council, and the European Parliament. And now still only needs some formal procedures. So, for example, the second reading in the European Parliament. And this regulation then is repealing the current eco-design directive, which is only for energy-related products, and is extending the eco-design approach by scope extension, which means that it now not only regulates energy-related products, but also other products, and their textiles are one of the prioritized product groups, and also introducing new requirements. And those key product aspects, which shall be regulated for the product groups, are listed in Article 5 of the ESPR, and I will show this for you on the next slide. And the ESPR also foresees an increased focus on product information, and there introduces or refers to the digital product passport. And the whole ESPR regulation empowers the European Commission to adopt so-called delegated acts for product-specific measures. So the development of the product-specific measures, also for textiles, is then done by the European Commission. And this is also a kind of formalized process where stakeholder consultation is an important pillar, and also negotiations between the member states, because the requirements have to be developed in the perspective that they have to be applicable for the whole EU, and there are always different, let's say, approaches how products are made. And so the next slide is on the project for the German Environment Agency, and here are the key product aspects that are listed in the Article 5 of the ESPR regulation. And we have prioritized the product aspects that are relevant for the textiles, and those are marked in bold. So in the project, we will develop minimum requirements for the aspects here which are in bold, and the key aspects here is durability. And this will be, we consider this as the leading aspect, as Maike Rabe also presented, as the leading product aspects to reduce the overall resource use for production of textiles. But also the product aspects of repairability, presence of substances of concerns, and all these in bold will be considered. And we will develop minimum requirements and also have a look whether it's possible to develop kind of graduated requirements, and also explain if we consider it necessary that requirements can only be applied in a time horizon. So that, for example, a minimum requirement regarding recycled contents, if we see that it's not feasible so far to apply a minimum recycled content by now, we could basically explain a process how this can further be developed and the recycled content can be hired. But we are still in the project process. So for now, we have categorized textiles into product groups and selected product examples for which we will then develop the minimum requirements for durability and all the others key product aspects to really provide concrete examples how this could look like. And the product examples that we have selected is a t-shirt, knitted sweater, jeans, and a functional jacket. And this is meant to reflect the diversity of textile products and also products which are placed on the market in very high amounts. So for these concrete product examples, we will develop minimum requirements with stakeholder participation, and our first stakeholder workshop will take place in April this year. So we are still in the middle of the process. One of the project's aims is also that we check whether the requirements can put into an eco-design label. On the left side, you see the energy label for energy-related products, which are on the market in Europe and which is aimed to be for the end consumer an orientation at the point of sale. So the energy efficiency is here put in a graduated classification, and the product is here depicted where it is, and also other product aspects are explained here in icons. And this is the energy label for smartphones. So the upper left icon, for example, is on the shock resistance. The upper right is on repairability of the smartphone. And we will check whether it will be feasible also to make a comparable, let's say, eco-design label for textiles. But on the right side, I have to mention, this is a mock-up that we use for for presentations on the project. So this is not something officially from the European Union. And if we consider that durability, which is here Haltbarkeit in German, that durability is the key product aspect, then a graduated classification could be built up along the durability of a product, with also additional icons showing the quality of the product according to the other product aspects here in the below side of the label. And this is also one part of the project. And I was asked to highlight some effects on garment producers in Bangladesh from the ESPR. But as this is still a process, I found it a bit difficult, but I depicted here 3 bullet points. So what is the aim of the ESPR? It's a product regulation, so it means that product aspects are to be regulated, and for the reduction of the impact in on the climate and the environment, the product design is a key role, of course. And so what you surely can expect are requirements regarding the product durability to ensure that more durable, or at least durable products are brought on the European market. And you can also certainly expect higher information requirements on circularity and other key environmental aspects along the supply chain, which needs to be transferred along the supply chain also until the company placing the products on the market. But maybe also these information requirements will be made available to the end consumer. But this is still this is not decided yet. And the overall aim is also a reduction of the environmental impacts in the supply chains, in the whole life cycle of the product. And here I highlighted, for example, the aspect of the restriction of hazardous chemicals or the sustainable sourcing of natural textile fibers, which is also a focus which was mentioned in the EU textile strategy. So I come here to an end. I hope I needed some minutes more, but here I finished and presented to you this German project. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Katya. I mean, as EU is the largest market for the Bangladesh garment RMG industry, so this is very important for us to really understand what are the new regulations that are heading our way and how the preparations can be taken to tackle them, and maybe take this more as an opportunity than a challenge for us. So very, very relevant. Thank you so much. And I for now, I think I would like to give the floor to Ms. Sonia Parenti for...
Yes, hi. Hello, everybody. Hi.
Fantastic. Sonia, you have 10 minutes. So yeah, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I don't have a presentation, but I'm just going to talk you through basically my experience with GIZ in Pakistan, which was very interesting, and it lasted over 2 years. And first of all, just a little bit about myself. As you said, obviously, my name is Sonia Parenti, and I currently work in sustainable fashion. I've been working in the fashion industry for about 20 years now. It sounds such a long time, but my father and my family, I'm Italian originally. They were in the fashion industry as well in Italy. So I grew up in factories, mainly in Italy, Portugal, running around to see production sites in Italy, Portugal, Spain, so all over Europe. And I covered roles as head designer, project manager, and collection builder with some of the most known brands in Europe. So some of them, some examples are I've worked with Prada, I worked with Burberry, I've worked with Dolce & Gabbana, so mainly in the luxury industry, but most recently I also consulted with more high street brands, particularly here in the UK, because I'm based in the UK in London. So I've seen it all. I've seen how collections are designed in the luxury industry, but also how collections are designed at more high street brands. And then sustainability for me, it's a driving force. So it's really inspiring for me. And I've been really working in this field for the past 5 years. So obviously with brands and with factories, I focus on circular design, sustainable design. And so from the idea to all the way to the final product, where we try to respect the environment. And lastly, I also train professionals in the textile and garment industries on topics like how to design a product in a circular manner. But also, I'm always very passionate about the latest technologies in the fashion industry. So, for example, like 3D printers, the digital passport. So when I visit factories and factory heads, I talk about all the latest technologies because, there's many businesses starting up that are interesting and that are new, important for the new economy. So, like also examples of new businesses, like the rental, the repair market. So it's good for factory leaders to understand the whole side of sustainability. That it's not just something that we have to do, but it's something that it's creating new business models, and so we're leaving the linear business model where we produce, we use, and we throw away. And we're moving into a new era where there's many business models coming up. And we mentioned a few like repair, recycle, reuse. And then most importantly, in the last 2 years, I've been working with GIZ in Pakistan. So my responsibility was as a product specialist and sustainable innovation leader. And we helped businesses to adopt, circular design methods. And in Pakistan, we worked with 15 different manufacturing partners, which was very interesting because my background, obviously, it's more in leather goods, and clothing, but within the 15 manufacturers, we had, factories that produce motorcycle boots, factories that produced motorcycle gloves, factories that produced footballs. So it was really, really interesting to see all these factories and visit all these factories and help them design sustainable products in Pakistan. So our main focus in Pakistan was obviously from my side. We were two colleagues. So we had an engineer that was dedicated more on water consumption, chemical consumption, and how to kind of reuse waste within the production process of the factory. And I was focusing more on the product development and circular design. So the key was to literally boost innovation and product development and focus obviously on sustainability and in circular design. So we were involved in designing and developing products with innovative production processes, but also innovative, materials. So for example, in one of the factory, we enhanced the production process. So we introduced them to the laser cutting technology. So, so this factory that produced, motorcycle gloves, they used to cut the leather with a die cut. And then we moved them onto the laser cutting technology. And obviously, as we all know, because we're in the business, the laser cutting technology reduces material waste and is more efficient. And then, so you have less waste and plus you're able to produce a bit faster as well. So with factories, we were looking at both processes that could, improve the production process and create less waste. But also we were looking at product. So, for example, in a company that produced T-shirts, we tried different materials. So instead of cotton, that it's water, that consumes a lot of water, we tried to swap it for hemp or for algae-based material. So then we created, a biodegradable T-shirt. So anyhow, we went in and we tried to help them with innovation and help them understand that if we want to be sustainable, you need to start from the design of the product. So if you design the product, as the other two, obviously, ladies said, in a way that then this product you'll be able to recycle it at the end of its life, it's already a big key. But what I found that in Pakistan, obviously, they were very good at producing, very good with the production processes. But in the research and design, office, maybe they lacked a bit of inspiration. So also, for example, we've designed zero cotton denim jeans. So because many of the companies in Pakistan, they produce denim, amazing stuff. And to be fair to them, they have already invested, like I know also in Bangladesh, with machinery that improves sustainability. So, for example, they use a laser for washing the denim instead of using, bleach and too much water. So the idea of the zero cotton denim jeans was to take away cotton from the equation, because cotton, you use so much water, and to use pencil instead. Then we worked with 3D printers. For example, there was another company that was working, producing motorcycle boots, very technical. And, it was going back and forth with Italy with all these samples. Instead, now they've acquired a 3D machine, and they can, print their own, samples in-house without having to go back and forth with Europe. Then also we worked on social responsibility, because this is very important for brands. So we did small project with local artisans, such as women's initiatives, where they crafted certain goods. But then we help the companies, promote these stories, because it's all well and good to do all these initiatives, but then you need to talk about them in the right way to brands and to, the European market. So through storytelling and marketing, we've helped them with that. And then, sorry, I'm going a bit long, so I just want to close by saying that one of the main aspects in Pakistan that we try to convey is that we need to avoid the race to the bottom. So where countries compete mainly on lower prices, because it's an unsustainable strategy in the long term. Because the ecologically we will pay for it. From a ethical perspective with workers, we will pay for it. So we were trying to influence Pakistani companies to produce and design goods that have unique selling points, that have an added value. So they could, ask, a smaller, a higher price for what they design. So this was the key of bringing innovation to Pakistan and showing them that, if we design something that has an aspect of sustainability, then the brands will maybe pay a bit more for it. So, for example, last example, we designed a football made with apple leather. So that was a very fun experiment. But to be fair, in the end, apple leather, so made with the waste of apple, juice production. So we made this football, and then it was picked up by Decathlon. So obviously not huge orders, but that's already a business card for the factory to show that they're working towards sustainability. I think I went over my time, so this is, all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sonia. No, I mean, I think it because we are in Bangladesh is also a production-focused country, and of course, currently Bangladesh is also focusing on trying to adapt a lot of low-impact practices. So it is very interesting to hear about your experience in Pakistan and what the overall situation was, so that we can also learn that how we can embed these practices in our day-to-day production processes as well. So yeah, thank you so much. It was very relevant. We'll definitely come back to you with a few questions. But yeah, thank you. This was the end of the presentation part. So now we go to the fun part. So now we go and have an interactive discussion with our speakers. Of course, I have a few questions prepared, but I see that there are some very interesting points that also came about while learning through this fantastic session. Because first we came to understand the academic perspective of it. Then we saw how that is connected to the legislative perspective, and finally we had some fantastic practical examples of how some of this can be implemented. So now we have also two fantastic panelists here. So first, I would like to go to Ranavik from H&M. Ranavik, we have all heard a lot about the new upcoming EU regulations. Can you share how that influences the design process in H&M? Have you made any particular changes to react to this?
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. So indeed, my name is Ranmai van Ieterson. I work in the EU PA team in Brussels. So I'm working a lot on EU policy, on circularity policy. And it's great to be able to build on these already great presentations beforehand on the EU policies when it comes to circular design. Because as we all know, and that we already heard, that of course what the EU does on circular design policies will be of key relevance here. Because products that will be sold on the EU market will have to be meeting the requirements that the EU sets to be able to be sold on the EU market. And building perfectly on what Katja said, so what I was thinking of talking about is really the EU circularity policy, building on a few examples and really showing how we think that will impact production, and also then here in Bangladesh, of course. And also build a bit on the legislation that is very interlinked when it comes to end-of-life management, also from the EU.
Of course.
So I thought that was these are the 2 points I thought I could share here. And as we already have heard, yes, the EU is really ambitious on circular economy legislation for apparel. This will be really a game changer when it comes to production. And the main piece of legislation is, as we already have heard, the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products regulation. And to follow up and continue on what already Katja mentioned, is the framework legislation is about to be adopted, but the specific criteria for textile and apparel are yet to be developed. We anticipate them to be ready at end of 25, something like that, with an implementation timeline 27. TBC, should I put it like that. But this is to mention and a few further points in building on what Katja already were saying. It is going to really drive production change. So they can regulate anything around durability, recyclability, recycled content. I will dive a bit into that one. Environmental footprint, substance of concern. This is really a range of product aspects that the EU institution can regulate when it comes to apparel. And so where we really are seeing the main impact, maybe also specifically for production countries, is two key examples. So recycled content and environmental footprint are two examples I thought I could highlight here today. And by no means, I'm not an expert in any way on Bangladeshi industry, but I have good conversations with my great colleagues internally, so that's also where this comes from. And to really start with the first point on recycled content, here we do think, for example, that the eco-design measure that they will regulate would be what we call a performance requirement. And to be a bit technical here, that means that we're talking about a concrete level of recycled content that each product will need to contain to be able to be sold on the EU market. In addition, it could also be an information requirement, equally technical here, an information requirement more the information that the brand will have to put on the product when it sells it in the EU market. So to be very specific here. And when we're talking about recycled content, the purpose of it, of course, to stir the recycling industry, to really drive that demand. We know that how they're planning, or that's what the current conversations, is that they're thinking about a recycled content target based on post-consumer waste, which I understand is of relevance for the Bangladeshi industry in the sense that there is more access to post-industrial waste and not necessarily post-consumer waste. So where, there will be a begging question, where will that post-consumer textile waste come from? And I think I will come back to that later on. But to highlight a bit, so how can one then prepare for a recycled content target? We don't know exactly how high it will be yet, but we're pretty confident that this will happen. So what we have been thinking about, what is really relevant is to look into the traceability of recycled content. Where does that come from? Do we have the data for it? Ideally, can we separate between post-industrial waste and post-consumer waste, that we know the difference and how much of it is in the product? These will be really critical things for suppliers to look into in the next few years to prepare for selling products in the EU. That I think is point number one that I thought was relevant for this conversation. And regardless of how a recycled content target is going to be shaped, investment in textile-to-textile recycling, maybe also in additional to mechanical recycling, also chemical recycling, these things will be really critical to be able to meet the demands of the EU. Then the second point, and that's on environmental footprint and carbon footprint. Just to keep in mind, these are examples, but that's where what we hear are clear interests from the EU to start to regulate on this. So that's more as a guidance for you. But on environmental footprint, we really think they're going to regulate an information requirement, so an obligation to really inform about the environmental footprint to consumers when selling those. And here also, equally on the recycled content target, traceability will be critical. Understanding what the footprint of the product is, also then, and really to see, can we really incentivize more investments in renewable energy to really reduce the footprint of the product? These will be critical things to pursue here in Bangladesh, I would say. And that is on product design, so really linked to the eco-design legislation that already was raised here. Then I wanted to just quickly add a point also on the end of life and the waste shipment regulation.
Of course.
Sorry.
Yeah, of course. No problem. Yeah, sure.
So this is really the second pillar of circular economy. How we make sure that also the end of life is managed in a good way. And I think one piece of legislation from the EU that is critical here is the so-called waste shipment regulation. It regulates, as it says in the word, shipment across borders of waste. And that also includes post-consumer textile waste from the EU to non-OECD countries. So also EU to Bangladesh. And what we know in the next few years when this regulation will come into force is that there will be much more restrictions on shipment of this waste. And to the extent that it might actually almost be too difficult to do it, because it will have to be, or Bangladesh as a country would have to be added to a pre-approved list by the EU, and also to put forward evidence on how that waste will be managed in an environmentally sound manner, clearly laying out what is the capacity for the recycling in the EU, all of these things. So from that point of view, where will then the recycled content, the post-consumer recycled content come from into Bangladesh when it's not coming from the EU? And we know also that here is also a ban in terms of import, exactly. So there will be a question around how will Bangladesh meet this post-consumer recycled content requirement in the EU legislation. And to add to this conundrum, we at H&M Group, we are pushing also and explaining to EU policymakers why it is really critical to also account for post-industrial waste in a recycled content target. So that's number one. And we're also really looking into, can we encourage the EU Commission to support Bangladesh to be added to this pre-approved list to make that easier. I will stop there, and we can follow for the next conversation.
Thank you, Ranvik. You addressed some very, very important points. Specifically, you really hit the nail on the head when you said that it doesn't really have to be post-consumer waste in a country like Bangladesh where so much production is happening. There is a lot of post-industrial waste that is already there, and I believe the industry currently is looking for opportunities and how to do this. Recycle them in the most efficient way. And of course, when you have a lot of, what is waste for some people can be feedstock for the recyclers. So the way I see it is definitely opportunities to get your hand into post-consumer waste, and looking into opportunities to recycle them in Bangladesh can be very important. But primarily, maybe what you said, that if we could also look into the possibility to add post-industrial there, because this is also waste that is really unaccounted for. We really don't know what, in many cases we do with meaningful collaborations, but in many cases we don't. So maybe how to look into the possibility of recycling them or getting them back into the product value chain, that would be very important. So thank you so much. That was very, very relevant. Nishatapu. So we have heard a lot from the academic perspective, we've heard from the legislative perspective, we've heard from the brand. Circular economy standards are coming, the eco-design regulations are coming. So how, from the BGMA's perspective, how do you see it? Do you see it more on something that is being imposed on you, or do you see this as an opportunity? It would be really interesting to hear how you see it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'm Nishat Hamid. My family business is in its third generation in denim textile. So I represent BGMA here today because I'm in their standing committee on SDGs and circularity. So BGMA is absolutely on par with everyone else in terms of they acknowledge the importance of circularity and sustainability, because you cannot talk about one without talking about the other. Right, and for us in Bangladesh, I have to say that it's the survival of the sector itself, because in 2026, we are looking into graduating into a middle-income country. So given the next 3 years of grace period, so 2029, we'll have to adhere to GSP plus. So when you have GSP plus, you have one of the criterions is basically double transformation. So for that itself, the factories will have to be vertically integrated, either upwards or downwards. So either if you have a stitching unit in RMG, you can either go backwards and have a textile unit, or you can go forward into the textile waste, right? So so it has nothing to do with the regulations that are upcoming. So it's just about your own survival in this industry. So that being said, I have to say this. So everyone is looking into that. So LDC graduation, is very important for us as a country and also for the sector. So that having said so, I want to also share that BGMA has also started to, they have a 3-year project that's been funded by the EU and Finland government, where we have important stakeholders in terms of, reverse resources, GFA. For policy, we have Chatham House. So on and so forth. We have a brand there as well. So BGMA is looking into all of the circular and circularity related systems that are currently in place. We know that this industry has been in existence for about 40 plus years, right? So we also have a parallel informal system in terms of collecting this textile waste, pre-consumer textile waste. So that is what BGMA is actively advocating, to formalize that informal sector. So I think this is a good point to,
No, that's really relevant and fantastic to hear that you're not taking it as something to be imposed. You're taking this as an opportunity,
Right.
and definitely that is the perspective, or that is the spirit that we need to take these sustainable practices to. That we need to take them as an opportunity, or we need to take them as something that we should look forward to, rather than just some regulations that we have to adhere to. So yeah, fantastic to hear about this. Maybe I would just like to go on that side. Yes, I see that Micah, you have your hand raised. If you would like to comment, yeah, thank you.
May I ask a question, or
Yes,
am
of course, of course.
confusing everything? So
course.
what I would like to ask to the two ladies now in the panel. One thing is that post-industrial or pre-consumer textile waste is probably the most problematic waste that we have, because this stands for products that were produced in vain. So this is something I think we should have a more, a stronger look on. How can we cut down on this? How can we reduce dead stock? All these problems. I think this has to be discussed strongly. The other question, which I would like to ask maybe for later, is there any experience, or is there any idea on your side how high the content of recycled fibers should be or could be? You talked about the denim world, jeans, which is a product which already is sold with recycled. Excuse me, maybe the words are not coming clearly. Where we already have recycled fibers in the market, but we all know that a cotton fiber will not get better by recycling. So we have quality problems, and here we always discuss how stands durability versus recyclability or recycling fiber content. And yeah, this is biting, these two aspects are biting each other, if you like. So my main question is, can we get closer to figures that are realistic for recycled fiber content, just from the side of the garment producers and not from the side of the scientists?
Thank you so much, Micah. That's a very insightful question. Nishatapu?
Yes. Actually, this was a point in the next question that's coming up in the barriers part. So so basically in denim, right? We have certain areas where we check for strength. So in terms of where your knees, that you need the strength the most, and then the belt loop. But for Shasha, we've been producing products with recycled yarn, and we've seen that actually the breakage strength is much weaker, right? And we've also communicated that with the brands, that the quality or durability is in question, right? So that's something, but so we obviously give our opinion, and then there's a discussion, and then there's a mutual agreement on how and what percentage to go about it. So that is something I think that's yet to come about, especially in denim. It's because the staple strength, the length is also in question, right? So this goes into a bit more technicality, but nonetheless, that's where we're at, right, in this industry. So there's always a mixed, I suppose. That you have to have a certain percentage.
And do you discuss with your customers certain values? You don't have to give figures now, but do you think that you will be able to come to these figures with your customers, where they say this is still tolerable and this is a no-go area?
For us, we provide to the brands, so we're the supplier to the brands, right? And then
thank you.
That communication is taken up by the brands.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nishatapu. Ranavik, anything that you would like to comment on durability versus recyclability?
So I think it was the question post-industrial waste, and just to clarify here, we're meaning the offcuts and not necessarily anything pre-consumer waste, just to be clear there. And of course, post-consumer waste should be the priority to really also get that on textile-to-textile recycling. I forgot to mention that in my intervention, but we think the element on post-industrial waste and cuts and fabric offcuts is really relevant for the conversation in Bangladesh, since that is what is available here. That's what I wanted to highlight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ranavik. I would just also like to mention one point here. As we are talking about post-industrial waste versus post-consumer waste in the context of Bangladesh, post-industrial waste, because, I'm working in an organization called Reverse Resources that is basically working in the waste supply chain. So maybe I can maybe add my 2 cents here. So basically, in our experience, what we've seen in terms of post-industrial waste, there is a unique opportunity to recycle them a lot better than post-consumer waste sometimes. The reason being, post-industrial waste, in case of post-industrial waste, we exactly know, the manufacturers exactly know what they're using, and that is much more standardized. And here, because of all this, is much more recyclable. And when you have a much more recyclable waste as input, the recycled content comes out as a better output. That generally we have learned in our experience and discussions with various recyclers and producers. So maybe, post-industrial waste, definitely in the context of Bangladesh, there is a large availability of it. So that aspect is there. But also on a usability perspective, that also can add a lot of value if we can direct them to a proper recycling opportunity or a proper recycling process. So yeah, fantastic. Sonia, yes.
Sorry, yes, can I add here? Because obviously when we talk about recycling, the post-industrial waste is actually much better because obviously if someone wears a garment, then it wears off a bit. So the quality of the textile wears off a bit. And also, when we recycle post-consumer goods, we don't know which chemicals have been used for each garment to be recycled. Instead, with post-industrial waste, because it comes from a factory, usually more or less we know about the chemical used in the treatment of that material, so it makes it much easier to use. And then, not to take away from obviously recycled content, but I think the fashion industry is a bit stuck with a few materials, because we've been using cotton for so many years. But there are so many other materials that could be suggested to brands, and that brands need to take into consideration. So hemp has come so far. It used to be scratchy. It used to be a bit bohemian and a bit uncomfortable, but now hemp has come a long way. You don't even recognize that a pair of jeans are made either of hemp or of tencel. I understand maybe the price difference could be a bit of an issue, but with hemp, actually, the technology has come so far that the price difference is just very small. So we must think that we're in a time of innovation. We need to think outside the box. So not just about the same 3 materials that we've been using up till now, because that will deplete our resources and water and pollution. They're linked to very high pollution. Aspects.
Thanks, Sonia.
Yes.
Now, I would have a follow-up question on this. It's very interesting what you've brought upon, the opportunity to use alternative materials like hemp or tencel. I would like to hear a little from your experience in Pakistan. You said that there are a few manufacturers that you worked with. Maybe that could be helpful for some of the audience or some of the brand partners who are here today. So in terms of using alternative materials, let's say hemp or tencel, what were the major challenges that the manufacturers faced? Like you mentioned, price. We heard earlier in some of the discussion that was taking on that prices could be a very challenging factor nowadays. So, like price, what are the other challenges you think that can come about while trying to adopt these alternative materials that our manufacturer and brand partners need to keep in mind, and how those challenges could be overcome. So what would be the challenges and how they could be overcome? Just if you could shed some light on it. Thank you.
Yes, very good question. So every time we talk about innovation, factories are a bit, dragging their feet because, especially because, I'm Italian. So in Italy, the factories are very small. So you have, a few ladies that stitch the garment, and everything is, how you say, it has a family setup. Instead, in Pakistan or in China, and these factories are huge, and so, when you say, okay, let's try a new innovative material, the main challenge is, in the normal production process, experimenting, it's a bit of a pain in the neck for everybody. But then it was interesting because in some of the factories we were discussing, okay, it could be interesting to have a micro factory within the factory. So, a sample, a little unit where you can just experiment, have fun and try with small production runs. Because obviously, when you introduce an innovative material, so for example, with hemp, because also with hemp, it depends where you buy the material. So the material from one supplier, the hemp, the fiber was too short, so it was creating lots of issues with the machineries, etc. But then we contacted this company in the UK that has developed a new machinery that kind of frees the fiber, and you end up with longer fibers. So then the machine was taking to this material much better. And so, once the factory sees that it's a material that can substitute, cotton, and it's easy to work with, because the key is obviously you want to have innovation, but you don't want the poor factory to battle with this new material. So I think in the hemp case, it's just a trial and error kind of situation. But then with the tencel, obviously tencel is, it's very used in the industry. The only issue with tencel, it's a higher price point. But what I always say to factories is like, when you present the items you make, obviously you're going to have 50% of denim jeans made of cotton or recycled cotton to showcase to brands. But you definitely need to have these new innovative materials in the collection, because, like, for example, with the example of the football made of apple leather, Decathlon, Decathlon go interested because you showed as a factory that you're open to innovation. So you show, look, I do normal footballs made with, PU. That so all our footballs are actually made with PU and all synthetic materials, etc. But we're trying these new things, and that shows that your commitment towards sustainability. And then slowly, when the price gets a bit down, then the buyer will buy more quantities of it. So I think it's just the initial mindset of the factory that needs to be a bit more convinced towards a certain direction. But once they see that these materials are easy to use, then they're on board.
Thank you, Sonia. That's great to hear. Thank you. Now I would also like to hear from Micah. So Micah, you were mentioning some about monomaterials, usage of monomaterials. Let's just say that nowadays that's also something popular that many of the brands are talking about. But when we look at, let's just say that in denim, we see sometimes a little bit of viscose put in cotton spandex blend. But I have a bit of a background on denim, and I know that bit of viscose is put in to get that extra luster that adds to the aesthetic. So in that perspective, how do you think the how do you think how do you think the brands and the manufacturers should think about focusing, because of course if you're looking at trying to make the material perspective, on a material perspective, if we can make it a bit more simplified, it's definitely easier to disintegrate or recycle it and bring it back into the supply chain. And on the other hand, it's a bit of a conundrum, because sometimes, let's just say, if you remove the spandex, it may have an impact with the comfort. If you remove the viscose, it may have an impact on the feel and the aesthetic. So from your perspective, how do you think that the brands and the manufacturers can go about it? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So that question is not easily answered, I think. And first of all, I would say a garment that cannot be sold properly is nonsense. So you first of all have to try to come up with a product that has a certain attraction. Yes. And gives you the comfort the customers want. So then on the other side, you need to compromise where you can. I think in the world of denim, monomaterial concept in a combination with elastic fibers is feasible. Contents from 2 to 3% of elastic fibers can be tolerated by the mechanical recycling processes. So here I think it is okay. If we combine cotton with viscose fibers, we at least have a little bit of a shortcoming when it comes to mechanical recycling, because here the viscose material is already on a lower quality level. Even if it is a good fiber, it will not survive the mechanical process in the way the cotton fiber will survive it. When it comes to chemical processes, I think cellulosic raw materials could be tolerated, even if we know that within the viscose fiber, the degree of polymerization of the cellulosic component is already lower. So it is a compromise. And if you want to be honest, recycling is all about compromising. And therefore, I think in the world of denim, it is probably easier than when it comes to other types of material where you might need higher elasticity. So, for denim, I think it's okay. For functional material, I think we should really strive for monomaterial concepts, and there will definitely be other products where you need to combine material. And here I would focus on durability and quality to have this on the top ranking, and recyclability will then probably be reduced in a certain way. But we also find these already mechanical recycling concepts where a fiber mixture, cotton polyester, is recycled in a whole, and the end product will still be a combination of polyester and cotton, knowing that we lose cotton by this process, so you will have to add virgin cotton to stay at the same ratio between polyester, cotton, 50-50, whatsoever. So, but this is also possible, and with these the demands that are put onto the products and onto the market, also recycling technology improves. And we don't really have to say that what we see today will be the end of our solutions. We are just at the beginning of the process. So, we should not just lose our hope and work on this topic together.
Of course. Thank you, Maika. That's very important. Of course, in the recycling industry, what was impossible to recycle yesterday can be very easily recycled today. And this is a very it's a very rapidly changing dynamic kind of a sector where you have new innovations coming every day, and hopefully new innovations that would go on a scale level. To go on scale, so that we will have solutions to all the kind of different materials that we have in our value chain. Perfect. So I again, in that time, would like to come back to Ranavik. So we have heard a lot about, we've talked about you were mentioning a lot about the upcoming regulations. Where do you see that the biggest challenges lie from your end that the manufacturers can improve, or should really focus on while tackling these regulations from your perspective as a brand? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I did already highlight it a bit, but maybe I can look into it a bit more deeper. And I also, just to add here to the other speakers, I mentioned recycled content and environmental footprint, but of course we know, and it is also super relevant for the legislation, is to look into durability requirements and recyclability requirements. But specifically now for suppliers and work that needs to be done in Bangladesh, on recycled content, that is really looking into the traceability of the fibers, and what I already mentioned, tracking and tracing pre and post. That will be critical to really understand that. That will be what we also will, this data we will really need to be able to verify the actual recycled content so that we can also sell those products on the EU market. This will really be a critical point.
Thank you so much. So tracking and tracing the overall textile waste value chain also, that can be something that they should focus on, along with the recycled content, of course. Thank you. Thank you. I would like to also maybe go to Katya now. Katya, if you could hear me. We have been having a lot of very interesting and innovative discussion from the upcoming legislation perspective. I was wondering, because we have a unique panel here. We have a representative from a brand, a representative from a manufacturer, representatives from the academic perspective and the development sector as well. So from your side, any certain message that you would like to give apart from the presentation that you've shared, or something that you would really like to elaborate on? Yeah, thank you.
Wow, that's difficult. And I really like the expertise which was compiled here at the panel and also online. So I find it hard to give any recommendation which hasn't been said so far, to be honest. Yeah.
Wow.
But what I really like the best is that you perceive the all the EU regulations that are set up not as something which is imposed on other countries, but also as a challenge, as an opportunity to reduce the overall impact of environmental impact of the whole textile production. So that's what I really like best. And if we can, in a way, support you to implement this, then just let us know.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Katya. I would have one last question maybe for Nishat Apu. Then maybe we could go to the audience for some questions, and then we could come back for the closing remarks. So Nishat Apu, it's been really an enlightening discussion. And we've discussed a lot about implementing circularity practices. We've discussed about the new upcoming regulations. We've discussed we've learned about experiences of other countries, how that could be embedded. You have, of course, shared your enthusiasm and the BGMA's enthusiasm, and taking it as an opportunity rather than an imposition, which is very positively taken. Everything is fantastic. Now, we understand that you're taking, we have to do this, but it's also very important that we, first of all, have a very clear vision of what could be the challenges in front of us, so that if we could account for the challenges in front of us, only then we could actually build a partnership together to tackle them. So from your perspective, which are the major challenges that you see you have to overcome, or Bangladesh has to overcome, to really take the next step towards circularity?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Umit. So the current system, right? The current system that we have, you have these informal textile waste collectors who come and take the textile waste away, which we commonly call it jute. So not only are they just taking the jute away, so they actually help the factories in multiple ways, right? So that's the difference between a centralized, I suppose, waste collection hub versus the current system. So we have a lot of female workers in this industry. So if there's eve teasing when the female workers are walking home, they come in to give certain protection if there's that complaint coming in, right? If there are workers' unrest a lot in that area, these these people again will ensure that, that certain factory that they usually buy the jute from will not be harmed, so to speak, right? So this is just to name a few, which is very important, right? So then there's the truck that is going to the port with all the material, right? So that will not be stopped by any of the local, I don't know, people who think they can get away with, right? So in this aspect, so I think these type of help is what the current system involves in, right? Which will be very hard for a centralized waste collection hub to provide. I think is one of the biggest, I would suppose, challenge, drawback, whatever you want to call it, that there will be going forward, right? When you shift out of this informalized side, the help part. And besides this, we talked about chemical management. I think it's very important because, for large factories, they're audited in terms of different areas. So chemical is also a big part. So that is not going to be an issue. But the issue is going to come from the smaller factories, right? When the audit is not so strong. So that collection or that recycling will be an issue because you don't know what kind of chemicals they're using. Another thing is what I want to talk about is the barriers in terms of pricing, right? So a factory that invests, say, suppose in this green processes and machineries that produce green products, say we invest 10 million versus a regular factory with none of this improvisations, they have something that's worth 2 million. But in terms of the pricing of the product, right, it will be probably like $3 for the improvised factory, $3 per yard, versus just a regular factory that's going to be $2. So then what happens is reality is, the order will go to the factory that will be a lesser price, right? For the most part, usually that's reality. So you see, these are the barriers. One way we're talking about actual green processes being implemented, not greenwashing. And then on the other side, we have this business aspect where, this is actually a real conundrum. So what do we go about it? So
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nishatapo. I really appreciate your openness and frankness in expressing this. And of course, I mean, this is something that we all face, that, of course, when you are, what is the cost of sustainability? I think this is something that many of us have discussed in different forums. And this is actually a brain teaser for many of us, and how to embed the business aspect to sustainability and circularity. Because if we can't, and if we don't, eventually that itself won't be very sustainable. I think that's something that we have to really consider.
One point I forgot to add
Yes,
was, Renewcell is an award-winning textile-to-textile recycling company based in Sweden. Sweden, right. And, they had to file for bankruptcy. I have to say that I thought their idea was absolutely brilliant for the fashion industry. It's chemical recycling. So in Bangladesh, we do mechanical recycling, right? You sort through colors and compositions, so that's easily done. But chemical recycling is actually trickier, right? But they had to file for bankruptcy. So that kind of brings, that's another barrier, right? That should be the company that should be excelling, considering how we're all focused on circularity and sustainability. But I leave it up to the audience to decide how the fashion industry is heading.
No. Thank you, Nishatapo. Again, another very astute comment. Something to think about for us, and maybe wonder how we should actually do this. And maybe because the way I see it is, this is something that we have to do, and this is something we really got to implement. And we just have to all sit together, put our heads together, and figure out what would be the best way to do it. Now, I think we've had a lot of discussion. I would like to go back to the audience if there are any questions before we go back to the esteemed panelists to get the closing remarks, and then we finish the session. Yes, maybe.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Shoaib. It was an excellent discussion. I am doing mechanical recycling for the last 25 years. I have a setup here in Bangladesh, in the EPZ. We recycle post-industrial waste, and we are probably the only factory which are allowed to import post-consumer waste also, because we are in the EPZ. Also, I have experience in spinning and knitting also. So I just give a perspective on as a recycler. First thing, I think the local factories which are producing the post-industrial waste should be educated about having a protocol about handling the waste. If they can just sort it at the point of production according to the color and the content, this would be a very efficient process, you know. So the BGMEA can probably play a part in that. It will reduce cost and speed up the process. Second thing about the legislation, when it comes through and everybody is using recycled content, soon as recyclers we are facing that our stream of raw material will have a recycled content. So we are probably having it secondhand to get it recycled again. So again, this is the day after scenario, and we should be looking to it also. The third thing is also about the materials. You know, in Pakistan, I have a recycling factory and a spinning factory there also. So we are quite innovative about the material we are talking about. We can do about 80% recycled post-consumer waste and 20% lyocell blend and make jeans out of it. And the good thing about it is that the denim dyeing is much cheaper, and it's used in the local market, and it's just cheaper product, and it's a fantastic product. So yeah, innovation is always needed in this regard. And also I have extensive experience in post-consumer recycling. So it's somehow easier because the label is there and we are quite confident about the content. So, and the material itself is much softer after being worn by the consumer. So recycling, at least in the case of denim, post-consumer wise is a better product. You know. So these are just my 2 cents about from the recyclers content point of view. Thank you.
So thank you so much. So BGMEA has an MOU with Circle Economy, and they have an app both in English and in Bangla, and it educates the mass in terms of sorting. I actually played that game myself, and I had to do it twice, so I realized that my sorting capabilities aren't great. But they it's very simple to use, and so it's something that BGMEA has been advocating as well. So and it's free download, so everyone is welcome to do it.
Thank you. Also, from the reverse resources perspective, we are also working with many manufacturers, including different brand partners in training the manufacturers in terms of better segregation and sorting practices. Of course, segregation at source is a must when you're looking at proper recycling opportunities on post-industrial waste. So yeah, if anyone is there who's interested about this, please feel free to connect. Thank you. I would like to invite some more questions. I see Omar.
My name is Omar. I'm director of Bangladesh Apparel Exchange. So it's a question or opinion you may consider, but first of all, my sincere apology that I will be a bit cynic in my opinion and question, but I cannot constrain myself to ask because all the experts and also manufacturers and brands representatives here. So earlier we saw that there has been a movement for organic cotton. But later we saw there has been some estimation that the total cultivation of the organic cotton in the world is much less than what the apparel industry or fashion industry claimed or demand. So my connections to the question or opinion here, in my conversation with many of the spinners and textile manufacturers here in Bangladesh, I have heard that one of them, their fundamental concern for the circular design is that the strength of the circular material or yarn is not sufficient if you say about the durability, because in the eco design or EU sustainability or circular textile strategy, there is both durability and recycled aspects. So though the experts have make the questions to the manufacturer Nishataba, but I would also repeat the questions to the expert of the designers there. Do you have any estimation or experiment you have that how much maximum recycle yarn is possible in a product to have a durable or long-lasting life cycle? And if we don't have that estimation, I think it is high time we all together first make this research and experiment that how much recycle contain a product can have maximum carry. Otherwise, the EU all the strategies legislation in draft materials, but if we cannot put our heads up and they enact that, and it will be mandatory for us to comply with. So sorry that we all care for the environment footprint, but do have that estimation or study the how much maximum recycle yarn or fiber can be used in a product. To the experts online, my question.
Thank you so much, Omar Bhai. That's a very, very interesting question. Anyone who would want to volunteer about this question? So if there an estimation,
I can try.
Fantastic, Micah. Over to you. So
I completely agree with you. Actually, this was the question that I asked in the beginning myself, and I wanted to know this from H&M, for example. So this is still a huge question mark, but what we find is that the possible content is getting bigger and bigger. So there are these improvements, and we have products, at least in the companies we work with, where we found, for example, for workwear, the feasibility of 20% recycled fiber content. So that I thought is a realistic figure, and that was including the keeping the quality level still on a very high standard. That seems to be possible, but it will be very different and depending on the products. So you will not be able to produce a men's shirt, a polyethylene type of fabric with recycled cotton fiber. So in that context, I would say, keep it at 0. And there will be other products where you can improve it. So the question will probably not be answered overall. It has to be answered product-wise. And therefore, I think the approach of the European Union will be product-wise. It probably cannot be that we have the same certain let's say 5% overall. That will not be feasible, at least from the perspective of a textile engineer.
Fantastic. Thank you, Professor Micah.
So at that point, I would also like to say goodbye to this audience here, because there is another meeting coming up for me. I would like to say thank you for having me here or there, far away. And one word that I would like to say, because I'm missing out on the final comments, what I think is very important, that on the side of the brands, the departments for sustainability, these teams must communicate much better with the departments of the buyers. So what we found in countries where we are allowed to work with, this is sometimes Bangladesh, Indonesia, the countries that produce garments, they all have the same problem. They do these improvements and the buyers don't understand it. They do not understand what is the benefit of a certain reactive dye, what is the benefit of a certain type of fiber. And if we cannot make this clear, sort of from the textile people to the buyers, it will not work. And therefore, I would like to ask for a better communication within the brands, with the big players who move the market, that the buyers understand more about sustainability.
Thank you so much.
So that was my last comment. And it's all about knowledge. I can't say this as a professor. It's all about knowledge. Thanks a lot. And I wish you good success for your conference.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Micah.
Thank you.
I think.
Goodbye.
Thank you. I think now if we can move towards the closing remarks of all the speakers. Katya, over to you.
Yeah, well, I'm not a textile expert. I'm rather an expert on, let's say, product regulations and this science to policy translation. And I really like the input on the recycled content and all the difficulties we have to face. We are still facing, and I think it's a very dynamic, still a very dynamic development in the recycled content. And we also had a discussion yesterday in our project team on the way to address the recycled content as the product aspect. And we also found that the verification is so far missing because the verification schemes do not differentiate between post-industrial and post-consumer waste. So we see without such a verification, a mandatory recycled content cannot be claimed in an ESPR delegated act for textiles. And so I also think that for the recycled content, the way would then rather be an kind of information requirement on the recycled content if it is used in a product, which can also be, so rather an information requirement with a kind of a stepwise process on how to implement this, but it needs to be product-wise as Maike Rabe already said. And so we are still in a process on how we can then recommend this to policy to implement it without that being too complex, because still this ESPR regulation needs to be also let's say, controlled by the market surveillance. And so the whole system cannot be too complex. And this has to be beared in mind as well. Yeah, that's my closing remark. And if you have any further questions, just let me know. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Katya. I mean, of course, verification and traceability to the go to make it more meaningful. Yeah, thank you. Sonia, if you were there, maybe if you could hear your closing remarks.
Yes, I hear you. Yes. So I just wanted to point out, as you guys mentioned already, but the importance of traceability. And I just wanted to make an example. I know you guys are more in the textile industry, but also in the leather goods. So, for example, now in the all the luxury brands are obviously working actively to kind of implement traceability tools. So, the digital passport, I do, I talk about this in my trainings, that it's key for every brand and for every industry. Because, for example, in the leather good industry, all the luxury brands, they don't want to be, tied to leather that it's coming from, that has links to the deforestation of the Amazon forest. So, all these luxury brands are worried that their name will be linked to the deforestation of the Amazon forest. So they're quickly implementing the digital passport to show that the hides they're using for producing their luxury handbags or their luxury shoes are definitely not linked to the Amazon forest. So I think going forward, even for, factories not to be tied in, for example, with materials that have such complex supply chains, like the cotton, because we all know about the cotton that was coming from China and how the workers were treated, etc. So brands more and more will implement this digital passport because they want to make sure that they're not linked whatsoever to difficult relationships and things being unsustainable and unethical. So this is I think something for Bangladeshi factories to look into, now, and it's important. But then, sorry, I just wanted to conclude by saying that, sustainability sometimes can be, it's so varied and it could be, a bit overwhelming. So I think, let's just take a step back and understand that, even small steps can amount to a big thing, even looking into packaging, there's all these innovation in packaging, the biodegradable plastic, there's all these new innovations that are exciting. So, when we talk about sustainability, obviously we need to be in line with European laws, but when we look from a factory perspective, we can say, okay, let's pick our battles, okay, we can start with the packaging and with the traceability, and then slowly you move on. You don't have to do everything right away, because sustainability and innovation is good, but we don't want to overwhelm the factories too much.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Sonia. You're absolutely right. If you, as they say, if you want to do everything right now, nothing gets done. So it has to be a process that people work towards. So fantastic. Ranavik?
Yes, thank you so much. Before I maybe summarize, I wanted to also react to the comment here in the back. So we also fully agree it is really critical when eco-design measures are set that you think through the balance in trading off between durability or recyclability or recycled content. These are critical points and that need to be taken into consideration when the eco-design measures are set in the EU. So that's something we are really agreeing with you on. To summarize, and what I also see, there's a lot of work ahead, one, to prepare for the EU legislation, both from our side, but also from suppliers' point of view. And where we are at today is really to also try to communicate to EU policymakers on what is feasible, what is possible, but also what is in line with our sustainability strategy and our circularity goals, etc. So that to really make that happen. And as to just quickly note, the final legislation is not ready yet. We're expecting it at the end of 2025, so there is a lot of work that is still ahead of us on preparing and finalizing this legislation. But that does not mean that we don't say, let's start to prepare, let's start to collaborate to make sure that we get there and do this in a good way. Because it will, it's critical both for complying, to be able to continue to sell products on the EU market, but also to meet our own sustainability and circularity goals.
Thank you. Thank you, Ranavik. Of course, that's the deal, right? That we have to work towards it. It is, we see it in the horizon. It doesn't mean that we stop there. We work towards it so that we end up reaching there in time. Nishatapu, last but not the least.
Thank you. Or I'll make it real short. BGMA is absolutely, aligned with the need for circularity and sustainability. Besides the Switch to CE project that's led by UNIDO, they're also with the CREATE project that is coordinated by Aalborg University in Denmark. It's a 5-year project, so they have a more holistic view on the entire informal waste management system. So they have PhD researchers on it. They're even developing curriculum. Not for, you have people who have been working in this area for the last 10, 15 years. They're well versed in sustainability, but also there are, employers and employees who have been working for longer than this time period. So to also get them on board on this bandwagon, so to speak. So they have a more cradle to grave approach in terms of what's happening with the textile waste. BGMA will also do a study on the social impact of the workers of this informal textile waste sector, because as we all know, these are predominantly female workers. So when we do formalize them, so we will also have to see the social impact on their livelihoods, because in effect, we are taking away their livelihoods. That being said, this is from the BGMA's point of view. Personally, I think research and development is the way forward. Like always, you cannot, be comfortable wherever you are. you always have to focus on R&D no matter what, because it's also like we were talking, communication is key. So whatever you are researching and producing, developing, you need to be able to share with the brands, so they are also part of the journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nishatapu. Yeah. I would just like to conclude by saying that from the reverse resources perspective, we're really happy to collaborate in both the Switch to CE and the Create project along with BGMEA. And we also appreciate the improvement of working conditions and compliance in the waste handling sector, because you see, when a sector is undocumented, it generally has a lot of opportunity. And the way we see it, that it again has to be a step-by-step process. We just can't just go there and say, okay, this is what you have to do now. It's unrealistic, and generally when people do this, nothing gets done. So we also, from our perspective, we see we are also working on the compliance sector in different projects, and we see that there's a lot of opportunity of improvement there. Of course, because there are a lot of most of the workers who are working in the sorting part are females, and there is a lot of opportunity to improve the working condition. And of course, we should look into the possibility of formalizing it, as of course Nishatapu said in one of her remarks, because it's not about. I would just like to add with you, it's not about taking livelihood away from them. It's about providing them with a better livelihood, so that they can have better working condition, they can have a better standing in this overall, they can find their place in this overall circular value chain through circular design. Thank you very much. It has been a very fantastic experience overall. I would like to thank the BAE team. I would like to thank the GIZ team for organizing this event, and especially, most importantly, the fantastic speakers we have. I think I had the pleasure of being the only male sitting here among this fantastic group of it's not just about gender balance. I say go feminism, go women empowerment. Thank you so much. We'd like to conclude here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.